Summer 2026, 1,000 acres of Oxfordshire farmland, and a single post on social media that stopped a country cold. Harvest already fussed. 4 words. A screenshot of a weather forecast. Temperatures at 29 degrees in Chipping Norton with no rain in sight. That was it. Nobody laughed this time because it wasn't a complaint. It was a warning, and the people who should have been shouting this from every platform, every news program, every government briefing room, and had been largely silent for months. If you've eaten food this week, this story is about you. And by the end of it, the only question you'll have is why nobody told you sooner. Subscribe now if you're new here. What's coming in the next few minutes is not what you think this story is. Let's go back to the spring of 2026, because that is where this disaster was written long before the cameras caught it. January, February, the wettest winter on record, fields underwater, farmers unable to plant. Then March arrived, then April, and the rain stopped completely. England experienced the driest April in over 100 years, the driest 3-month spring period since records began in the 1800s. Rainfall at 40% of average levels. Across the south of England, farmers watched their crops that had somehow survived the flooding begin to crack. Then May came, and the heat started. Then June, then July, then a 5th heat wave landed on a country that was already on its knees. The driest July in England and Wales since 1836. Not since before the railways, not since before the Industrial Revolution. The driest July in 190 years. Jeremy Clarkson, the 66-year-old former Top Gear presenter who bought his 1,000-acre Oxfordshire farm for £6 million in 2008 and had been trying to work it seriously since 2019, looked at his weather app, looked at his fields, and posted 4 words. The internet responded instantly. Millions of people, sympathy, shared anger, jokes about the British summer, the usual. But here's what almost nobody said. Clarkson wasn't complaining about his holiday being ruined. He was describing the collapse of the British food supply. And he was the only person with a platform large enough to make the country actually listen. Now, here is the number that should make every person in this country sit up. The Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit analyzed what the 2026 summer did to British farming. Their conclusion: the heat waves and drought had knocked 2.5 million tons off the UK's cereals and oilseed harvest, compared to forecasts made just 3 months earlier. 2.5 million tons gone. Scorched out of the ground. The financial damage: between 305 million and 390 million pounds in lost revenue to British farmers this year alone, on top of what they lost in 2024, and on top of what they lost in 2025. 3 consecutive disasters, 3 consecutive years where the weather didn't just disappoint, it destroyed. The Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board put wheat yields at 6.8 tons per hectare. The 10-year average is higher. Wheat, spring barley, oats, all below average. And if these numbers hold, 2026 will be the worst harvest ever recorded in the United Kingdom since detailed records began in 1984. Not one of the worst. The worst. 4 of the 5 worst harvests ever recorded have now happened in this decade. That is not a weather pattern. That is a new reality, and British farming has not been built for it. Here is where it gets interesting. Because Diddley Squat Farm, Clarkson's 1,000 acres in the Cotswolds, was supposed to have a good year coming in. That is the part nobody is reporting. March forecasts from the US Department of Agriculture and European agricultural bodies suggested UK yields in 2026 were on course to be at or above 10-year averages. Farmers had survived the flooding, they had planted, the crops were in the ground, and they were looking good. Kaleb Cooper, the farm manager at Diddley Squat, who was already working at the farm when Clarkson bought it and has since become the most watched agricultural personality in British television without ever auditioning for it, was managing land that had genuine potential this spring. Then April went dry, then May arrived like a furnace door opening. And by July, with no meaningful rainfall since mid-June across large parts of southern England, crops that had been on track for decent yields were dying in the ground. Clarkson posted his 4 words. The season was already written, but here's the counterintuitive part, the part that changes everything. Clarkson then admitted something that no celebrity farmer, no estate owner, no television personality has ever said publicly with this level of directness. Most farms don't have TV shows to keep them going. Read that again. He was not complaining. He was not looking for sympathy. He was stating the structural truth of British farming in 2026 in a single sentence. and almost nobody noticed what he was actually saying. What he was saying is this: Diddly Squat Farm survives because Amazon Prime pays somewhere between 10 and 12 million pounds a year to document what happens there. That money, television money, not farming money, is what keeps 1,000 acres of Oxfordshire farmland functioning as a working farm. Without Clarkson's Farm, the television series, there is no Diddly Squat Farm, the agricultural enterprise, not in any financially viable sense. And that is not a scandal, that is a diagnosis. Stop, because what comes next is the part that the farming press, the national newspapers, and every other video covering this story has completely walked past. Diddly Squat is not the problem. Diddly Squat is the proof of concept. The farm has a shop generating an estimated 2 million pounds annually. It has a pub, The Farmer's Dog, bought and renovated for 1 million pounds, now employing 146 people. It has Hawkstone Beer, a brewery generating 21.3 million pounds in annual revenue, growing at 134% year on year, now stocked in 2,000 pubs across Britain. And it has Amazon, that ecosystem built around a working farm, built around genuine agricultural struggle, built around the honesty of a man who posts "harvest already foched" instead of a polished PR statement, is the only model that has successfully answered the question British farming has been asking for 30 years. How do you make a small farm financially viable in an era of catastrophic weather, volatile commodity prices, and government subsidy uncertainty? You don't make it viable through farming alone. You make it viable by making the farming visible. The failure is the product. That is the most uncomfortable truth in British agriculture right now. And it came from a television presenter from Doncaster who admits he still knows almost nothing about farming. Now let's be precise about what 2026 has actually done to the wider picture. Jeremy Clarkson has now lived through the worst year ever in British farming. Twice. He called 2025 the worst year ever. He said his harvest that year was shocking. He described the scale of the climate damage in terms that most farming bodies were far more cautious about. And the country nodded, shared the post, and moved on. Then 2026 arrived and did it again. Worse. The ECIU analysis is unambiguous. 4 of the 5 worst harvests on record have occurred since 2020. Climate change is the cause. The pattern is accelerating, and the farming sector most exposed to that pattern, small British arable farms without diversified income streams, without television deals, without brewery operations, without farm shops drawing 250,000 visitors a year, those farms have no equivalent of Amazon writing a check. They have the land, the debt, the equipment, the knowledge, and the weather destroying all of it for the 3rd year running. Clarkson said it directly. If a disaster on this scale had befallen any other industry, there would be a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth. He is right, and that is the quiet outrage sitting underneath this entire story. There is also the bovine tuberculosis outbreak. October 2025, Diddly Squat locked down. Cattle could not be bought or sold for 2 months. The farm went into a kind of suspended animation while the BTB tests were completed. Between 2021 and 2022 alone, across England, 22,934 cattle were culled because of bovine TB. This disease is not rare, it is not dramatic, it is a slow, grinding disaster that sits underneath the more photogenic catastrophes like drought and heat wave and gets a fraction of the coverage. That outbreak, on top of the harvest collapse, on top of 3 consecutive years of climate-driven agricultural damage, is what Clarkson's Farm Series 5 is now filming. It will be, almost certainly, the most emotionally difficult series yet, and the viewers will watch every episode. Which brings us back to the thing nobody wants to say directly. The farm is more valuable as a document than as a farm. Not because farming doesn't matter. Farming is the only thing that matters when you remove it from the equation and realize the supermarket shelves look different. But because in the current structure of British agricultural economics, a 1,000-acre farm that makes its real money through television and beer, and a pub and a farm shop is an anomaly. The 45 million pound total valuation of the Diddly Squat operation did not come from the soil. It came from the story. You cannot manufacture that. You can only find it, point a camera at it, and be honest enough not to pretend the harvest isn't ruined when the harvest is ruined. But here is the part that should genuinely worry you. What happens when the climate damage reaches a scale where even the television money isn't enough? This is not a manufactured tension. This is the unresolved question sitting at the center of every conversation about British food security right now. The ECIU analysts used one phrase in their 2026 report that deserves more attention than it received. They warned that UK farming risks entering a climate doom loop where repeated harvest failures undermine the financial capacity of farmers to invest in the resilience they need to survive future failures. The farmers who most need to adapt are the ones with the least capital to do it. Clarkson has Amazon. Clarkson has Hawkstone. Clarkson has 250,000 people a year queuing for his farm shop. The farmer in Cambridgeshire who said, "I've never known it this dry and hot on our farm," in the week these numbers were published does not. Stand back. Look at the full picture. A 1,000-acre farm in Oxfordshire, bought for £6 million in 2008. Year 1 profit, £144. Current land and enterprise valuation, £45 million. The farm shop turning over an estimated £2 million annually. Hawkstone beer at £21.3 million in revenue, growing at 134%. A pub employing 146 people. A television deal paying £10 to £12 million a year. And in the summer of 2026, with England recording its driest July since 1836, with 5 heat waves in a single season, with the UK harvest on course for the worst total since records began. The man who built all of that looked at his crops, posted 4 words, and told the truth. Harvest already fussed. Not a press release, not a consultation with a communications team, not a carefully worded statement about the challenges of modern agriculture. 4 words. And in doing so, Clarkson did something that the farming industry, the government, and the national media have consistently failed to do across 3 consecutive years of escalating agricultural disaster. He made people feel it. Here's what that means. Clarkson's farm was never a celebrity vanity project. It was never a rich man playing at farming. And it was never just a television show about vegetables and tractors and a man who can't reverse. It was, accidentally, then deliberately, then structurally, the only media operation in Britain capable of translating agricultural collapse into something the public could understand and care about. And right now, in the summer of 2026, with £390 million in losses sitting across British farming, with the worst harvest on record either already here or one dry August away from being confirmed, that translation has never mattered more. The farm is fussed. And that is not Clarkson's story alone. That is the story of what British farming has become. And what happens next. To the food on your table, to the farmers who grow it, to the land that is being pushed past its limits by a climate that does not care about 5-year business plans. That is the story nobody has fully told yet. Clarkson will tell it in Series 5 on Amazon to millions of people who would not read a ECIU report but will absolutely watch every episode. And they will feel exactly what the farmers have been feeling for 3 years. That is not entertainment. That is the most important agricultural communication in modern British history. And it happened because one man bought a farm, made every possible mistake, lost 144 pounds in year 1, and refused to pretend otherwise. If you found this one worth your time, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We cover these stories the moment they break, and the ones that follow this are going to matter. We'd genuinely love to know, have you visited Diddley Squat, the shop, the pub, any of it? Drop it in the comments. And if you haven't, after this, do you want to? Thank you as always for watching.